certainly inappropriate for a diplomat credentialed here in Australia to represent his country to threaten us with economic sanctions or consequences because we are simply pursuing what is in our national interest and, frankly, what's in the interests of the whole world. I mean, who would not want to get to the bottom of the exact origins of the virus, which we know originated in Wuhan, but we don't know exactly how? I think it's in the interests of the entire world, in the interest of combating this in the future, that we know exactly how it came about. And it's very concerning that the Chinese Communist Party thinks it's inappropriate that Australia would call for such a thing and thinks that it's completely fine for them to threaten us with economic consequences.
Did the DFAT secretary ring the Chinese ambassador for a please explain over those comments?
I've seen some reports to that effect in the media this morning, but I don't have any further information other than that, Peter. But it would be a normal and appropriate thing for our diplomats to do, to ask the Chinese government to explain why it thinks it's appropriate to threaten us simply for asking for an independent international investigation and a scientific investigation into the origins of this virus.
So it's appropriate that those comments should be checked? Absolutely,
and the Foreign Minister, Maurice Payne, was very firm on this yesterday. Australia will not be deterred by China or anyone else trying to intimidate us into not pursuing this matter. It is a grave and serious matter, and it is in the interest of the global public health that we do pursue this, that we do get to the bottom of this. And no, anyone trying to get in our way in doing that, we will not be heeding.
What do you think it says? Well, when their response is, well, we might not buy your wine, we might not buy your beef. Does that show that, they're being squeezed?
It doesn't send a very positive signal at all, Peter. It shows that the Chinese Communist Party is extremely anxious to prevent an independent investigation into the origins of the virus. We know that from the way in which they reacted initially when the virus was discovered, when whistleblower doctors, nurses and scientists who called out that this may be in fact a serious virus that was transmitting between humans. Some were arrested, others were intimidated, others were coerced into silence. And more recently, the Chinese government has announced that any independent scientific research within China into the origins of the virus must be approved by the Chinese Communist Party before it can be published. They've also censored on social media key words and key terms about the origins of the virus. Now, none of that instills me with confidence that they are genuine about getting to the bottom of how this virus got out, and that is a great concern.
Yeah, but we need them, though. We do need China. We need the money. How much of a hit do you think it would be if a boycott was to take place?
Well, we need China, Peter, and China needs us. Let's not forget that many of the critical inputs to Chinese industry, like iron ore, coal and gas, come from Australia. We send it very reliably, very dependably, very affordably, and it wouldn't be easy at all for China to replace those three major inputs into their industry. So we have a mutually beneficial trading relationship, and that's something that I hope continues to remain strong and, in fact, flourishes into the future. But it can never be allowed to come at the expense of our values or our sovereignty or our national interest, and the government won't allow that to happen.
Do you think we're just going to have to live with, mutual distrust of each other in the same way that China, and Russia distrust each other, but they continue in that manner?
Well, I hope not, Peter, but the honest truth is that countries can trade when they do have different political systems. There's nothing that stops business people in either country from doing mutually beneficial deals and exchanges, even if the governments have disagreements from time to time. So there is no reason why our trade relationship should be disrupted at all.
Do you trust them?
I don't trust the Chinese Communist Party when it comes to the origins of the coronavirus. I think their behaviour leaves a lot to be desired.
What do you think the origins are?
Well, the truth is we don't know. The best and most likely theory is that it originated in or around the wet market in Wuhan, but there are other theories, particularly about the research laboratories in Wuhan. That there's no evidence to confirm that yet. They are just theories at this stage, but that's one of the reasons why a genuinely independent scientific investigation is needed, so that we can get to the bottom of it and we can be sure why and how.
So are you open to that theory that it might have been some kind of leaked biological weapon?
Well, it's not really up to me to be open or not open to it. All I can say is that there has been speculation to that effect in the media, and it would be good for everyone if we clarified whether that was true or not.
I just want to get your thoughts, James, just before we go. There's the old saying that a crisis shouldn't be wasted, and growing calls now for economic reform. What is the path, in your opinion, to economic reform here?
Well, coming out of this crisis, Australia is going to have two really big challenges. We're going to have a much higher unemployment rate than we're used to, and we're going to have a much higher national government debt than we're used to. And if you want to create jobs and if you want to pay down that debt so it's not passed on to future generations, we're going to need much higher levels of economic growth than we're used to in this country. Standard, normal, healthy levels of economic growth that we've had for 30 years in this country, which have been great, are not going to be sufficient to put a dent in either of those things. So we really need to do everything we can to unleash investment and productive economic activity on the other side of this. The first priority is obviously lifting, as soon as it is safe to do so, all of the restrictions that are in place now, which are coming at a very heavy economic cost. And the second part of that is, I think, reform, as you say, reform to our tax system, reform to our industrial relations system, reform to our federation, reform to our trading relationships that are able to unleash the productive capacity of the free market and private enterprise in this country.